So let's get started. Bismillah. All right, and just want to make sure I can see this. Okay, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anbiya'i wal mursaleen. Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'een. Wa man tabi'ahum bi ihsanin ila yawmiddin. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It's so good to see, to just know that I'm with all of you right now. You know, we're all physically so far apart, but means like this right here really give one the feeling that you're so close to one another, especially because you're forced to look people in the face, and you can see everybody. It would help me if, yeah, there we go. Okay. So inshallah, we have just about 45 minutes. And in the time that we have, I wanted to share a couple of things, a couple of reflections, and you know, perhaps we can, we'll be able to go through the reflections I wanted to share. Maybe we'll only go through a portion of them. The title of this session, how COVID-19 might have, should have, and already has changed us, is actually not a very good title. It's not a good title for the reason that it's partially true that there's massive change that goes on and that has been going on and will be going on. But in reality, we know as believers that what changes anything in this world is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And through different means, through different ways, other things may play a role, but ultimately it goes back to him. And so the believer never loses sight of that. They understand that the food that they eat is going to make them less hungry. But at the end of the day, they still know that nothing moves in this world. Nothing happens. Not even a viral particle, not even a glycoprotein binds to a receptor, except with the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But what I wanted to reflect on with my younger brothers and sisters, and I think there's some of you who are my older brothers and sisters too here, is that these kinds of events have a huge effect on a whole generation. And it's not the first time this has happened. I spent a year in college studying the effect of epidemics and outbreaks in Egypt. And these are things that happen time and time again. They've happened in this century. They seem to happen every second or third generation. And there are lessons in these. In everything, there is a lesson. But what I want to start out with, and maybe what I would hope we would at least take away from today, is this thought right here, is that the person who actually wins and succeeds in this time is not the one who is just able to stay away from the virus. It's the one who is able to do what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would want you to do in this time, and gain the most from the time that you've been given, wherever you've been placed, whether you're in New York, as some of my friends are, at Mount Sinai Hospital and at other hospitals where they're working hard, or you're in a much safer zone where you've been given the luxury of just being at home and ordering online food, or being able to order food for others, whatever the situation may be, wherever you are. How are we taking the most advantage of that time? And that's one dua that we should be making if we don't know how we should be using our time. So it's the person who really is able to benefit from this time, to reflect about their life, and is able to emerge from it in a way that takes them closer to Jannah, right? That's ultimately the goal. The believer has their qibla. Their qibla is the Kaaba, yes, when they pray, but their qibla, their ultimate destination is Jannah. So when they're looking at any event in their life, what they're trying to figure out is this going to get me to Jannah or not? That affects their calculus at every moment. But And the one who fails during this time is not the one who gets the disease and then dies as a shaheed, as we know those who pass away in these times are martyrs, but it's the one who didn't change. And so let's think about that. I want you to take a moment to read through this hadith right here. And I want you to pretend like that the time actually was it, we were able to rewind it to January 1st. And pretend like you saw this hadith, it popped up on your WhatsApp, on your million messages, where the Prophet ﷺ is reported to have said that whosoever begins the day feeling family security, right? Being secure at home, good health, and having enough food for provision for the day, it's as though he possessed the whole world. كَأَنَّمَا حِيزَتْ لَهُ الدُّنْيَا. And ask yourself, on January 1st, 2020, if you read that hadith, would you really feel like you had the whole world? Or in your heart of hearts, was there actually a lot more that you were just trying to get, right? Whether it was materially, or whether it was a sense of unease with what you've been given in this world, or the goals that you've been set and you've been falling short of them. And think about what you experienced on January 1st. If you were in the group of people, which was a vast majority of us, that probably had all of these gifts at that time. But probably because of those gifts, did we feel like we had the whole world or not? And this is something that I want us to begin to reflect on today. What did that hadith mean to us then? And perhaps after the time that we've been going through right now, what does it mean to us? Or what will it mean to us? Not just tomorrow or the day after when we're still at home and we're still ordering on Instacart, but in 30 or 40 years, when we're with our grandchildren. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to see that day, say Ameen. Imagine what that hadith might mean on that day, when somebody else in that day, 40, 50 years from now, is complaining about this or that. And we're just thinking back to the day that the best thing that we had in the whole world were these three things. But did we feel like we possessed the whole world? فَكَأَنَّمَا حِيزَتْ لَهُ الدُّنْيَا. Something to really think about. What I want us to do is I want us to be present. And what do I mean by that? I mean that the Muslim is the ibn al-waqt. He is the man or the woman, the child of the moment. Now, I know we probably heard the phrase carpe diem, right? Live for the day because you may not see tomorrow. But this is the Muslim understanding of that. Because if you watch the Robin Williams movie, and carpe diem, it's about expressing your desires the most and really trying to just experience today because tomorrow may never come. But for the Muslim, there's a little bit of it. There's a big difference in how we understand that. First of all, we have to understand, who are we? When I say be present, who is being commanded in that? And what does it mean to be present? Many of us forget that our bodies, that we are made out of something that is part of this world and something that isn't, right? So our bodies are made out of soil, right? Out of clay, out of teen. That's what Adam was fashioned out of. But the ruh, that we actually have a soul and a heart within us, that is something that continues onward to the next world. And so many of us, we're not sure that whether we actually have a heart or a soul. We don't realize that there's actually something inside of us. It's kind of like when you have a seed in the ground and it doesn't look like there's a plant that could grow there. But if you keep watering it, that seed suddenly grows. And then when somebody experiences growth within their soul and their heart, that's when the person realizes, and for sure they know this, I definitely have a soul. I definitely have a heart. But it's difficult to know that when it's so buried in the dirt and we keep piling dirt on top of it, that we never give the opportunity for water to be able to reach that seed. I don't know about you guys, but many of our fellow Americans have started gardening, right, in these past weeks, including myself. I went out to Home Depot, I built some raised beds, planted a whole lot of things. I thought I didn't know I was going to be here actually in the US more than a few weeks, and now it looks like we're going to be here for a bit longer. This is good planting season. So I went out and bought seeds and planted it all. And at first it looks silly those first few days where it looks like you're just putting water on dirt. But then it's after that first week that suddenly the beans, they sprout, the squash, the seeds, they sprout. But the soil has to come in order for the seed to germinate, right? To go from a state of being almost dead to suddenly giving forth so much life at such a great rate that you can't even imagine it. One day you look at it and there's nothing there. The next day, something just bursts through the soil. And this is the sign that's pointed to us in the Quran. Inna Allaha faliqul habbi wan nawa. Allah is the one who splits the seed. For me, that's my wow moment. But sometimes we have to get out and be able to see these signs for them to help us make sense so we understand them. But let's go back to what we said, be present. What does that mean? Part of that first is to understand, who are we in this occasion? Who are you right now? And so if this is you right here, and you have the past behind you, the future in front of you, it's very important for you to understand, what is it that you can actually control? What are you capable of controlling and planning out? Like you, whether you're in high school or college or early, I remember planning everything out. After this, I'm going to go here. After this, I'm going to go here. I even one time wrote in my journal, at this stage, this is how many kids I would like to have, or this is what I want to be able to do. But all of those plans, they're good to have as intentions, but it is important in some stage of our life to know what is that we actually can control. Because most of our disappointments are because of unmet expectations. And that red line represents what we actually can control, or what I would say almost can control. Because we can't control the past, obviously, it's obvious. Unless you've discovered something, please message me about that. The future is something that we cannot guarantee. I can't even guarantee, let alone 10 years or 20 years, or what am I going to do with my career? I can't even guarantee the next 30 seconds, but I can almost guarantee the next 5 seconds. I can almost guarantee the next maybe 3 seconds. That's where I could feel most sure of. Because there are so many other things other than COVID-19 afflicting me, or that could end my life right now. And so we only are able to control that sliver of time, or almost can control it. And we can't even control our actions, because in the next 3 seconds, I can't even guarantee I could get up from this chair I'm sitting on and read a book, or I can go and make salah, or I can go and help somebody, or make a phone call, or call an aunt who I haven't called in a long time. No. But what I can control is that seed inside of me. I can control my heart to be able to have an intention. And so that's a very powerful and empowering thing that we have to start with. What is it that we can actually control? That we can control not even our bodies at that stage. It goes back to what's going to go to the next world. It's just that heart right at that moment, right where that red line crosses the screen. And so we have to be the ibn al-waqt. We have to be in the moment and understand that that is our greatest job in this world, is just to be able to figure out, what is it that I'm supposed to do right now? Especially say I'm 16, sitting at home. My food gets made for me. Maybe I have to do a few extra chores now with what's going on. Now, what does that freedom mean for me? What skill set do I have that I could actually use that time to be able to benefit myself or others, right? There's an urgent need for the present, but there's also the urgent need for the future. What skills am I trying to acquire? Now, what does this mean in real life? Okay, you're probably asking, okay, I'm present. I already knew that. Let's go back a month ago in India, just over a month ago, where you had riots in Delhi in the Muslim neighborhoods, where there were a number of Muslims that were brutally murdered. there was an iconic photo that went around. Maybe you've seen this photo. I remember seeing it was in Time magazine, I believe. It was in the New Yorker, and it was this man surrounded by this Hindu mob, this extremist Hindu mob. And I could only wonder, it was just a passing photo. But then a week later, I met the journalist. I met a journalist who interviewed this man right here, who was in the middle of this gathering, this mob of people hitting him. And in the interview, he said, this is him right here. This is him right here, Zubair. A simple man who, he said, they even tried to hit me with a sword and the sword was too dull. But this is why I'm bringing this up, is because this man knew what he was supposed to do in that moment. He was asked by the journalist, were you scared? Were you fearful for your life? And what emotions did you have? And his immediate response, not trying to show off or brag, his immediate response was, fear. You are only scared when you're doing something wrong. When you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, there's no reason to fear. And I was shocked. It almost brought me to tears. Then I just realized that the definition of fear that the journalist and myself and everybody else has been operating on was the worldly definition of fear, just how we feel. But when we understand fear at the highest level, a fear at the highest level is not just what happens to us in this world, it's what happens to us in the next world. That's what I mean by making Jannah your qibla and your context. Making the reality of punishment, the fact that we are accountable for our actions. That is what somebody actually needs to fear. But we'll talk a little bit more about fear because it is real, and anxiety and these kinds of things are very real during these times. And we'll talk a little bit more about them, inshallah. But now that we have an understanding a little bit about what we can control, so we're not trying to manage our whole lives and we're just trying to sort out what we can in this moment. We're not letting the next 10 years of worries pile on to us in this moment. Once we understand also the beauty of understanding what is fear at the highest level, something that we can aspire to. And I ask Allah that He would give me the opportunity to experience the courage of our dear brother Zubair, here, a victim of the Delhi riots. But through that interview, he taught me something that I'll never forget for my whole life. So now let's come to the story. There's two stories that we need to face, that we've already faced, but I wanted to share it with you because I know some of you and many of you probably have been following the news and reading a lot. I think I'd like to retell a story maybe you've already heard on two levels. That one level is the level of the virus, and one level is the story, and that's the viral story, right? Not a story that has become viral, but really a story about this virus. And the second is the global story of what it means at the level of on a global level. So this story is about the biochemical story. I think that for those of you that love biology, chemistry, and everything in between, this will be interesting. But at the same time, we're going to move toward just a reflection on the bigger story here, and it's for a purpose here. I know you're thinking, is the halaqah, why are we talking about science? But there's a real important purpose behind this. So bear with me, okay? Jazakallahu khair. So this right here is a picture, right? Or an illustrated picture that was of COVID-2, right? That's the SARS-CoV-2, right? The official name of the actual virus, COVID-19 being the actual disease. And just to think that on the head of a needle, you could have up to 350,000 of these, right? This is so small that if you were to blow up a hair to the size of a football field, this would be about 4 inches across, right? This tiny thing that's basically like a ball covered with genetic material inside, right? And I'll try not to use too much jargon, but I think a lot of you do understand it. So I'm going to go ahead and use it. This ball that's filled with material inside, right? The single-stranded RNA, right? It has the genetic material that will allow it to keep replicating. On the outside, right, what you see are those, what we call spikes, and that's been talked about in the news. The spike that allows it to basically enter other cells in your body, that works almost like a key, and basically the virus operates in that way. So let's move a little bit on here. So here's I thought was a really helpful illustration, to be able to simplify it and understand what is it that the virus is doing. So the virus, once it enters the body, there's a specific kind of cell that it goes for, right? It goes for specifically cells that, specifically the cells that have a receptor called ACE2. So that's like a special kind of door. And so, and these cells are found in the throat, all the way down. They're actually found in the lungs. There are a lot of them. There's in the digestive system. They're found in many places. So it has a door, you could say, in many cells. Once it uses that spike, right, those red projections that you saw, it goes into the cell, and the material that it has to copy itself, it basically has, it's coming with its copies. Like, yes, if you were going to go to the, to a copy machine, and it's able to go to the ribosome directly, and the ribosome is able to, unlike some other viruses like HIV, for example, HIV needs a little bit of processing. Here, the RNA is able to go in directly into the ribosome, and that's when you see all the little circles beneath. That's when those need to be cut up, those pieces, so that way it looks like the pieces that would make a new piece of the virus. So then there's another step there, and then once the parts of the virus are remade and copied, then they're able to come back together again, right? So if you see here, right, they're all loose here, and then they're able to come back together again, and then exit the cell and make more, and thus have one virus came in, and now there's many that release into the body. And at each of these stages, you have an opportunity to stop it. And it should be very inspiring for us to think about the importance of science, right? The importance that if somebody could come up with just one thing that really targets one aspect or a number of aspects of this process, that would solve this entire problem that we're in right now. And just to think about who that person is, who's going to be that person that finds the cure to it, right? That we should be making dua for them. And at the same time, as we'll mention a little bit later on, think about right now, especially if you're in high school or college, you might be thinking, wait, I don't have the resources to figure out a vaccine. But this should alert you, just as it alerted so many, of the importance of knowledge. The importance of knowledge, even though there's thousands of labs that are working right now to figure this process out, which has already been figured out in a number of other viruses like it. But if we just had that exact target and we were able to figure out a new way to be able to stop this right here, then all of the trouble that we're seeing around the world would end, with regard to this, at least. So take a moment just to watch this right here. I thought this was a really helpful animation. I think it's important to, again, know more about this. I just wanted to give you a quick overview. So now you understand the virus basically entering the cell and replicating itself, copying itself, and then being able to increase. So here it is, right? We're going to move a little bit forward. I'm going to take down the volume here because I'm just going to kind of narrate this. And you can watch it on your own time as well. So let's start it right about here, right? So, right. So here. I'm not sure is it playing for you guys in terms of the volume?
The protein shell provides a hard protective enclosure for the genetic material as the virus travels.
I'm not sure if the volume's also working for you guys, but otherwise I would just narrate it for you guys. But
outer membrane. Projecting from the envelope are spikes of protein molecules. Both a typical influenza virus and the new coronavirus use their spikes like a key.
All right, so I'm going to assume that you guys can't hear the actual narration in the video, and we'll move forward. And so these are again all the spikes, right? It's just like a ball. And so when somebody sneezes, right, or touches things, then you have a bunch of these that are stuck in a droplet that end up entering a person's body. But inside of the body, there's a very particular place it goes to, right? It's that special doorway that's found in throat cells and all the way down into the lungs. And so here, this is where those spikes there, they turn and allow the cell to take in the virus, put it in an endosome, and then from there, the virus is able to directly give the genetic material, the single-stranded positive sense RNA, directly into the ribosome. And so the ribosome is like your copy machine. And so once it goes into the ribosome, here it is, they're being copied, and then new parts of the virus are being made, going through the Golgi apparatus, right? Which is, and then eventually, once it's all packaged, right, they'll all come together. And so this is what you see right here are parts of the cell of the virus coming together again, and then budding off, and eventually going to other cells. But then how does the disease happen? Pneumonia is when you have a buildup of pus fluid in the lungs, right? And so this is where it gets really dangerous, because the virus is able to get into the deep parts of the lung, right? Your lung has this tree-like structure called with bronchi and bronchioles. And at the end of the bronchioles, that's where you breathe from, right? This is what Allah has given us to be able to breathe, the alveoli. And it's the cells in this alveoli, which are the ones that are targeted and hurt and cause the most trouble for people, because the cells that the type 2 pneumocytes, right? The cells that are attacked in the lung, those are the ones that help to keep the lung elastic and flexible. And so once the body starts to try to attack that area, and the immune system sends all of its factors in there, no longer can those function as they usually function. And so that's when that's why there's a huge need for ventilators. That's when it becomes difficult to breathe. If you've read the stories of people, healthy people who contracted it, it's shocking to see how they describe what it's like to almost suffocate. And so that's why the need for ventilators is so important, because to help us breathe. And so here's an example of the alveoli becoming inflamed, and then the buildup inside of it. And then at some stage, then you don't have the oxygen exchange that you usually do. Sometimes it only affects a part of your lung. Sometimes it can affect your whole lung, as you can see here. And so that's when you have all of these other symptoms. You have the ventilator. And now you're probably wondering, maybe you've seen this before. Maybe you've seen something like it. But that assumption needs to be backed by when you see people who are doing research in these areas, as somebody who's young, it really makes you think a lot about it makes you think a lot about, isn't that something that I would like to do? Isn't that something that I want to be able to contribute to? Because Allah has given us so many skills, right? To be able to either to be able to calculate, to be able to analyze, to be able to think. And we have to ask ourselves, what are we using those skills for? And this is one avenue. I know that for many of the youth that my friends in the sharing, you guys are really intelligent, really smart. And these are questions that shouldn't pass you up, especially in this time. And so I would hope that one day, inshallah, that amongst you are those that will be able to discover new vaccines and new ways of being able to treat disease, because you can just see what an impact you have on the world. And I would be jealous of your reward in Jannah. I would be very jealous of your reward in Jannah. So something to reflect upon. And so we'll move onward here. And so this specifically right here is the example of the spike. So those little red spikes, this is the structure of it, and it looks like it's just a bunch of ribbon, like at a party store that they got tangled up. But that's the actual spike. That's the actual key that attaches into the cells in the body. And it just so happens, for example, that that it's because this right here is such a good key, right? So many times better than previous viruses, that it's able to get into the body in ways that some of the previous, for example, SARS virus wasn't able to. And so just being able to stop just this right here would change the entire world. And I just wanted you to, it was a long introduction for a very simple idea, but a very powerful idea. Because I want you to look at exactly, when we say the virus is doing this, think about this exact process, which we're looking at right here, the spike glycoprotein, which is the ultimate key that takes it into the human body. At the same time, there's a global story, right? There's a much bigger story that's being told here of the progression of the disease. And one of the things that you've seen is the importance of statistics and epidemiology, right? That math matters, right? We saw that science matters a tremendous amount, as we just saw. Math matters tremendously, right? It's many people in January or February, when they were sounding the alarms, many people thought, oh, that's ridiculous, or would it really happen? But you saw the power of being able to help people down the line. And so countries that were able to take the right measures and to be able to foresee and look at facts as they are, were able to benefit tremendously from them. And so I bring these up again for a number of reasons. Number one, just to give us an idea of the extent of the problem. Here we are at almost 1.2 million confirmed cases, let alone the millions others that probably are there but haven't been tested. And we see the country that we're in just 2 months ago was down at the bottom of the list, and now we're right at the top. So it's to give us an idea, both to appreciate the power of the tools that led us to these, but also to allow us to appreciate how great the problem really is. And the fact that so many people in the world are at work to try to find a vaccine, that there's so many efforts, but what it shows is the need to advance the frontier of knowledge. And I pray that you, myself, others, our children, our grandchildren will be a part of that process. So when you look at something, this is the whole story of just what's happened to the whole world in a single graph, right? And if we look at it on this page right here, we see, what would give somebody a lot of hope, just to be realistic, that the number of the thousands of people, 250,000 people just recorded that have recovered. And at the same time, there is reason to be anxious that there are confirmed deaths from this, significant amounts as well. But we keep our hope and our fear in tension and together. Now again, we've gone through a whole lot, and you're wondering, where are we going with this? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَنَبْلُوَنَّكُمْ بِشَيْءٍ مِّنَ الْخَوْفِ وَالْجُوعِ, that we will certainly test you with fear and hunger and so many other things, right? The loss of your property, right? All of your stocks, all of this, so much wealth that a person had. وَالْأَنفُسِ وَالثَّمَرَاتِ, and the actual people themselves, and the crops, the food, and we're seeing all of this right now before our eyes. وَبَشِّرِ الصَّابِرِينَ, but give good news to those who are patient. And note that in this verse, Allah says, بِشَيْءٍ مِّنَ الْخَوْفِ. He doesn't say test you with fear. Technically, it's with a little bit of fear. بِشَيْءٍ مِّنَ الْخَوْفِ وَالْجُوعِ. But just as Allah outlines for us and gives us the guideline that this is the way this world was created as a test. That's what it is. If we were expecting something else, then we're not understanding actually the world around us. And so later on in Surah Yunus, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, well, here's how you solve it. أَلَا إِنَّ أَوْلِيَاءَ اللَّهِ لَا خَوْفٌ عَلَيْهِمْ. That listen, the friends of Allah shall have no fear, nor shall they grieve. And so we're told that this world is going to be a source there is going to be fear that people will experience, and that's normal. It's a natural human emotion. But that fear will not come over us. That fear will not overwhelm us and take over our ability to think and to be able to live and to be able to thrive and to be able, most importantly, to prevent us from doing the things that we need to do to help others in the immediate sense, to be able to help our families and to help our souls get to Jannah. Now let's look at how it has already changed our lives. And again, we'll go back to the it here, why we italicize it. We'll see in the next section, which is how might it change our lives? The most obvious ways is what we do, right? What we're already, things that you would never have imagined 3-4 months ago, suddenly we find ourselves in that kind of a situation where if an alien were to come by, they would just wonder, what just happened? What's going on? It's changed the way that we look, what we wear. Maybe we're wearing snorkels and going around too, like this guy right here, as we've seen so many people who don't have the ability to protect themselves, especially in hospitals right now. May Allah make it easy for them. Who would have thought that in a first world country, in the leader of the free world, we're not able to protect the people that take care of those who are free. Our lives have changed. We're all online right now. You're probably trying to keep up with your online classes and trying to figure out that how to do that well, how to come to class not in your pajamas and sitting on your bed, but probably sitting up, at your desk. Try to make it seem real for you. At the same time, maybe this cartoon represents what it's like sometimes when talking to family members who are using Zoom or FaceTime or these other modalities for the first time. Or maybe you've already run into the situation where you've realized that you were not on mute and you were talking about everybody else in the Zoom chat room when it was on gallery. So there are a lot of new things that we're doing that we have not done today and done before. It's also changed the way that we get together, right? We're not in the masjid right now, and those kinds of gatherings, for at least for the foreseeable future, for the next few weeks, maybe are not going to be possible. It's changed the way that we eat. Suddenly we're making adjustments to that. How we celebrate, how we mourn, people getting married, the way they're getting married on Zoom, or how we mourn people who are sick in bed in hospitals, whose family members are FaceTiming in to say goodbye to them before they pass on. Think about that. It's really changed our lives in really, really profound ways. The one word that we hear a lot is essential, right? Because it's non-essential businesses should shut down. Essential workers need to be at work. And we're thinking about what are the essentials of the home? If there's anything that this has taught us, it's to understand what is it that makes life run. Before, you can go to a supermarket and you see 1,000,001 things. But now you go there, you'll see a lot of things actually on the supermarket shelves. But it's the really important things that you actually don't get to see anymore, right? It's the eggs, it's the milk, it's the bread. It's the flour that makes the bread, right? Okay, people who who bought the bread legitimately here, they might need to come back tomorrow for bread, but somebody who picks up a bag of flour and knows how to bake a simple loaf of bread, something that human beings have known how to do for forever, is going to be able to bake a whole lot longer. And so it's made me think a lot when I go to the supermarket. Wow, all of these other things on that aisle, not so important. But the things that are important, now I can know because they're not there on the shelf anymore. And all I have to look at is a tag with a price. And in the Quran, we're told to constantly think about this. We're told to constantly think about this, where food really comes from, to be able to appreciate it. Because when you understand that system, when you understand how special it is to be able to go to a store and just buy eggs and milk without any of the effort, then you're able to be grateful for that experience. But we have taken all of that for granted. And now we're in the same place as so many other people in the world who've been experiencing this for a long time, right? Whether it's Syrian refugees that I've lived with in Istanbul and in other places in Turkey, in across the Middle East, or whether it's refugees within India now that have been created by the riots and for other reasons, so many other places in the world, in Kashmir, the lockdown there, we're just experiencing a little bit what they've already what they've been already experiencing. I actually even thought of buying chickens, but I just realized I have to figure out first how to grow squash, and then maybe move to that. Our dear Sheikh Abdul Rahman, he was ahead of the curve, right? Like so many of you with your chickens. Now you don't need to worry about where your eggs come from, but it makes you realize how valuable those things are. That's the point that I want us to share and reflect upon. How amazing it was, how great a gift it was to just walk into a store knowing that there would be milk, knowing that there would be eggs, knowing that you could just feed your family. But unfortunately, we are human beings, and human beings, we forget. It's very easy to forget and not realize where things come from. It's very easy not to be grateful for things. Because we forget, but when it gets taken away, it becomes a lot easier for us to understand how valuable those things are. We've been faced with uncertainty in other ways as well. But when I say uncertainty, let's think about it this way. It's not that we've realized how uncertain the world is, whether I'm going to be able to go back to school before the summer, or whether I'm going to be able to graduate, whether I'm going to have an online graduation where it's just going to be a giant Zoom gathering with all my high school classmates. The uncertainty was already there. And I want us to think about that. All that this has done is shared the uncertainty that was already there. So the uncertainty of where food came from, that was already there. We just took it for granted. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Mulk, قُلْ أَرَأَيْتُم مِّنْ أَصْبَحَ مَاؤُكُمْ غَوْرًا. Do you think, say, O Muhammad, tell them, do you think that if the water were to just go a little bit deeper in the earth, if it were to be placed farther down, فَمَن يَأْتِيكُم بِمَاءٍ مَعِينٍ, who's going to get the water then? Human beings, the deepest hole we've been able to ever dig on this planet is about like 7.5 miles. It wasn't even halfway through the mantle. But imagine if water, instead of being at the levels that it is, where somebody can just dig in many places in the world and find water. That's a miracle. But we don't think of it as a miracle. And the Quran is trying to get us to realize how amazing the world is that we live in. It's trying to get us to experience wonder. And Allah tests us with both, tests us with good times and with tough times, so we can realize the value of those gifts. And so something like death was already there before. We were already guaranteed to die at some point before. This is a picture from one of the trucks that they had to be bring in as an on-the-go morgue in New York City, because they can't handle the number of people that are passing away. But the passing away was already happening. There were already every day so many people who were dying from all sorts of reasons. And we were never guaranteed to live anyway. Before COVID-19, we weren't guaranteed to live 10, 20, 30 years. It would be a great gift, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for that as a gift. But that's what I mean. Before COVID-19, maybe we just thought and assumed, you know what, the average life expectancy is 70. That's what I'm going to live to. Or that's what my friend or my or my uncle, my ammu, my chacha. So these are everybody follows the numbers, the statistics out there. But now we're realizing, no, none of those were guarantees. They would be great gifts, but those were gifts in themselves. And so we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help us build that capacity in good times to be able to realize the gifts. Because it's when we don't acknowledge the gifts in good times that those gifts are taken away from us. I also want us to think about this, is that we might hear people around us say, you know, especially if you guys are pretty close to New York City, and but still sort of far, and I ask Allah to protect you guys, protect us all. But it's not the virus that's doing all of this, right? Allah is the one who created life and death and all of the pathways to that. When we sleep, there is already an uncertainty whether we are going to wake up. Allahu yatawaffa al-anfusa hina mawtiha wallati lam tamut fi manamiha. That Allah is the one that wills that when the soul gets removed from the body when we're sleeping, Allah wills whether that soul is going to be put back in the morning so we can wake up. And so that has already been happening. In a way, you could say we were already actually experiencing that death. But there's a lot of uncertainty for sure with all that's going on. So many changes. Here is the Louisiana Convention Center. I was just there 2 years ago for a conference, walking in there, collecting all the free pens, and not even thinking of those as gifts. I just thought of those as just free things. I just stuffed this bag, and then I eventually just threw it away when I came home, probably most of it, maybe a few pens I kept. But look at what it is now, where Louisiana is experiencing some of the highest death rates in the nation. Things can change just like that. And there are a lot of big changes going on. This was, it's also a chance for us to see not only the extent of the problem, but we're also seeing so many things that have already changed. People enacting and trying to do new things to be able to help the situation. So for example, here, I've been living in Turkey for the past year, as many of you know, and I'm amazed at how they take care of animals on the streets. Every animal is vaccinated, so you can pet them, and the dogs and the cats. The city actually builds homes for the cats. They actually let cats into the masjid, which is the best part. It's like after salah, you're sitting there, and then you're in at-tahiyyat, and your eyes are closed, and suddenly you feel this warm furry thing come on, and then the Imam says salam, and there you are. You can just say Subhanallah, 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 and so it's really a beautiful thing to see. But what amazed me is it's such a merciful society, and it really shows the love of animals that the Prophet ﷺ expressed, of feeding and allowing them to eat, to drink. Such concern. Look at this. This is a news article. I haven't seen this anywhere else in the world, because now people are worried. How are these animals going to drink? So now the city is taking it upon itself, the country, to be able to make sure that there is enough food, not only for people, but for cats and dogs on the street. Something quite amazing. But there's a lot of other changes that already have happened that maybe we're not even aware of, right? So you're like, why is there a whale on my screen right now? Well, there's a whale on your screen because right now all the cruise ships are gone, right? None of them are sailing out there to Alaska. And what they found is actually that cruise ships actually cause stress to the animals. And so especially to whales, they found that it induces stress in them, that when cruise ships pass by and as large ships pass by, whales have that beautiful sound they emit when they're communicating with each other. They actually go silent when the ships go by. But now you can only imagine in areas like that in the deep sea, where now they no longer have to worry about us to cause them stress. Or you've probably seen, like in South Carolina, suddenly alligators coming back out on the street. Or in other cities and towns where suddenly nature's been given a break. Suddenly geese and ducks, they get to roam the streets without being worried. But more than even that, it's already been confirmed that just this break that we've taken, right, as civilization has been suspended for this period of time, just this little break right here, air pollution has decreased, right? The levels of our emissions have actually, because we've been emitting less, it's actually dropped in the atmosphere, and in major cities. And think about this, that air pollution alone, the WHO estimates, kills 4 million people a year. Diseases related to air pollution and deaths related to it. It's actually so quiet on the earth that seismologists, people who measure movement in the earth, usually they can't hear things from the other side of the earth because there's so many things that they wouldn't, to block it. People, running around in their trucks and their cars and so forth. But now some of them have said that they can hear movement on the other side of the earth. That's how quiet that it's gotten. So just as, nature is taking a breath while the rest of us are holding ours. Now, let's see how much time we have left here. I'm really bad at keeping track of time. Oh my gosh, we're over time. All right, I guess 6:53 was our time, right? Sorry, I didn't even see the time, guys. I think we'll. I want to respect your guys' time. You know, some of you might have bedtime. I know some of you go to sleep at 7 p.m. You're still on your 5-year-old bedtime, but you know, perhaps we'll arrange another session, inshallah, to go through the rest, to talk about what I think is even more important, not just how it's changed our life, but how it might change our lives, and I mean our life, and I mean my life, because it's up to us individually to do this with the help of Allah. But I want us to think and reflect upon what has been said, and it's been a mumbo jumbo of things, but it was building up to what I was hoping to be able to discuss with you, and perhaps I'll just mention it very briefly. You know, is to think about the short run and the long run. What is it that we need to be doing with our skills that we have? What is it that we need to be doing, not just to be able to do the things that we've been doing before, but what is it that we're changing in our lives? Because there has to be a change in our, that's the person who wins in this. It's somebody that is changing their schedule and is using the opportunity they have, the free time they have, to fill it with things that are good. Remember, our heart is like a seed that's deep within the soil of our body. And seeds, they grow with warmth. That's what allows germination to happen. They also grow and they need water. And water is the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is the remembrance of Allah. That's what allows a heart to grow and to flourish. And if you and so dhikr is very important, right? To be able to take the time after salah, to be able to reflect upon who is in control, to take advantage of the evening dhikr times that are available online in the community with our families after the salah. And again, like I said, try to remember all the good times. When you say subhanallah, alhamdulillah, Allahu Akbar, think about those gifts, because that's what dhikr does. Eventually, you don't think the water is going through the soil, but it actually is. And you don't know when the plant is coming, and you don't know when you're going to need that fruit from the plant the most, because it's at times like these when all of the virtues are activated. Patience today means something totally different from patience before. And so try to figure out, how is it that we're going to change our daily lives? How are we going to add that dhikr into our lives individually, as a community, and so forth? And realize that all of the uncertainty that we're facing was already there to begin with. I'm going to skip quickly to the end here. Let's go. Yeah, as you can see, very important things to talk about, right? Toilet paper. I just want to skip to the end here. Just think back to this right here. Think back to being present. Come back to the moment. Just at the point where all the crazy WhatsApp messages you're getting, and the crazy news that you're hearing, realize that what matters is what you do right now, because the next 5 seconds you may not get them. Reflect upon the hadith that we started with. Man asbaha minkum. Think about whoever wakes up in the morning. Think about, and you're right now experiencing those gifts by itself, and now you're realizing that this is the whole world that you've gone. If this is the position you begin, there are a lot of people that right now are not able to experience that. But now that you have it, I want you to experience what it's like to experience it. I want you to experience what it's like to experience having security, not worrying whether somebody's going to break through your window or to bomb your home or to be able to threaten you on your way to the grocery store. What it's like to be able to just have enough food for today. That's what the hadith says. It's not even worrying about 2 weeks later. It's worrying about today. And if you're experiencing health, of the greatest of gifts, because health is the crown on top of people. Only the sick can see that crown. The healthy, they don't see that crown. And so Make sure that you take advantage of it. Wake up early, sleep early, eat meals with the family. Take advantage of this time. Schedule your day. There's no excuse for staying up all night and then doing your online classes at weird times. You've been given this opportunity to reset your life. Next time we'll talk about what it's like when we reset our life in the long term, but reset your life in the short term. Be the one who gathers everyone for prayer. Write a journal entry every evening, every morning. Reflection is very important. And spend a few minutes after every prayer making dhikr and dua. Because if there's anything that we need to be able to experience right now at this time, that is the foundation of every action. Whether we've been put in a position where we're the one figuring out the vaccine, whether we're the one who is the first responder, whether we're just at home and we're in 8th grade or 10th grade or in college and we're just trying to get through this semester, or we're studying for a test that's deadline keeps moving forward and forward. In all of those positions in life that one can be, it all starts with the same starting point. It all starts with an intention. Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakeel. Allah is our sufficiency. What we'll do is, if you have to leave, you're welcome to leave. It would be really nice to hear from you guys, though. I was thinking actually this should just be like an interactive session. It's kind of weird. It is a little weird talking to a computer. But maybe from the chat we can talk a little bit, or if for those of you that are able to stay on. But let's just end with a surah, and then we'll end with Surah Al-Asr. And then those that need to leave, you're welcome to leave. Those of you that would like to stay on and chat for a bit, inshallah, reflect a little bit more, I'll stay on as well. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر صدق الله العظيم. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. Let's read a Fatiha for all those that are right now on ventilators in hospitals, nurses, for so many people, for those that are spending long hours in the lab, risking their lives, for those that are essential workers that are trying to keep our society running, for those that have been enduring these problems for so long. We keep them in our du'as and we read Surah Al-Fatiha. Alhamdulillah. Let's see that.